Hi guys, welcome back to my book channel. I hope you're having a great day today. I'm so excited to film this video because I'm talking about some of my favourite books ever. I am doing a kind of like ranking my Sarah J Maas reads. I have not read Crescent City, so that's not going to be included in this video at all, but I do plan on reading them eventually. My TBR is like ever growing. It's ever growing, and I quite like having a kind of other Sarah J Maas verse series to read eventually. It's quite nice. It still feels kind of incomplete, and to be honest, I'm still grieving finishing Throne of Glass like 5-6 months ago. So I'm just letting myself hurt about that still, half a year later. But today we are talking about, if I can lift them up, there's so many. Today we're talking about Throne of Glass and ACOTAR. I have not read the kind of novella, little tiny book in ACOTAR, the blue one. I've not read it, and I stand by that. So I guess that's my first and like the bottom of my list essentially. So yeah, I wrote a list of my favourite to my least favourite, and I am going to go through all my whys and how I feel about each book and where they place in my scheme of things. I will just say I am a Throne of Glass girl. My first video on this channel was about Throne of Glass, and it has literally, it is incomparable to me. It has left a void in my soul since I finished it, and I've never experienced anything like that. The Song of Achilles is my favourite book of all time, but this is my favourite like fantasy series ever. This is my favourite series ever, and yeah, I'm gonna get into that obviously. But that doesn't mean that all of the ACOTAR books are gonna be at the bottom necessarily. I'm just gonna go through why and how I feel about each book. Obviously there will be spoilers in this video, so if you have not finished either of these series, obviously maybe this video isn't for you at this point in time. Just come back and watch it after you have finished the series. So let's just get straight into the video. I am going to start from the bottom of the stack, and that is where it all began, which is quite ironic. This is probably in total my least favourite of the Sarah J Maas books I've read, A Court of Thorns and Roses. Now, I know this book gets a lot of hate, and I do think this book deserves to be at the bottom of my ranking. Doesn't mean I hate the book. I genuinely like think this is a fine book. There are certain things in this that I am not so much a fan of. I found it like just a bit plain and a bit ordinary, nothing really special until we get to Under the Mountain. Under the Mountain is my type of stuff. I love that trials, that really like grueling type of challenges that the main character goes through. I sincerely love trials, so that's why Under the Mountain really saved this book for me, and it is probably why I pushed forward and continued the series, because I don't think I was really in love with Farah. I definitely wasn't in love with Tamlin. But see, when she meets Rhys in this book, it's so obvious because I was reading this kind of, I do think this book, for me, I hate the kind of throw-in romance, unnecessary feeling romances in fantasy, just in general, to be honest, and I feel like Tamlin really is that in this, and that's why I just didn't really enjoy it. I didn't click with that romance. I really like Lucian though, so another character that I really loved in this, that saved the book for me and saved a lot of Tamlin's next scenes, I guess. Whenever he's included in the series next, Lucian is usually about, so his sidekick really saves the day. And yeah, other than that, I wasn't a fan of this book. it just didn't really, it doesn't compare. Everybody says you've got to get by this book before you really get into the series, and it's so true because the rest of the series is completely different. And I think once you read the ending of this, when Feyre turns Fae, she dies and then she becomes Fae with all of the different powers of all the lords, the High Lords. I think that really sealed the deal on the later books for me. So yeah, bottom of the list, I feel like it deserves to be there, but it's like a fine start to the series. I do wish the whole Trials and the Under the Mountain part was maybe a bit more of the book. I know this is the shortest book out of the series apart from the kind of novella one. So yeah, this is fine. This is fine. It's just nothing special. It is just where it all begins. And I feel like once you read Throne of Glass, this cannot be anywhere else, in my opinion. So I stand by that. It needs to happen to get you into the rest of the series, but if it was just a standalone, it's not gonna be important, is it? So, ooh. So next on my list would be Crown of Midnight. This, I have beef with this book. I was so infuriated throughout this book. I am a Dorian girl, okay? So Throne of Glass connected me to Dorian in ways that I love and I continue to love throughout the series. I love his character. Cole, on the other hand, yes, I call him Cole, don't come for me. I called him Cole throughout the whole series, so I'm not going to change it. I know it was wrong, but whatever. I just cannot get on board with Cole and Selena. I can't. I physically can't. And I know now, looking back, that Cole's character is meant to be this way. I mean, I appreciate the human perspective he brings to the series, but it wasn't until Tower of Dawn that I really began to appreciate his character, because in the early books, no, I'm sorry, I was on the Cole hate train, and I stand by that, because in this book, I just could not get behind it. I could not get behind it, and I had so much hope for this book after Throne of Glass. I really expected Selena to be this cool badass assassin, and I feel like what you're served in the plot really doesn't happen in this book. I just felt it was slow and just a bit boring in general, and yeah, it is the least favourite of my Throne of Glass ranking, and I stand by that. Some people really love this book, could not be me. I literally don't even want to spend any more time on that book, that's how much I really dislike it. Okay, next book is Throne of Glass. Now, maybe it's just something to do with the first books of these series, but this did not hit the way it should have hit. I know that the Throne of Glass world really builds up the magic aspect anyway, but I was expecting so much more of it to be revealed in this book based on the blurb, and I was expecting trials in this book because of the blurb. It is literally, she's going to the castle and she's going to join this competition to become the King's Champion. It is all about the trials, but they're literally brushed over, and it is all just about the court politics and romance. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I loved the amount of Dorian that was in this book, because I love Dorian. I think he's such an amazing character, and he deserves honestly way more focus in these books. Oh my god, also the way that Cole and Selena treat Dorian in this book is another reason why I hate it. That man deserves the world, and I will never forgive his best friend and the woman he was in love with for doing that to him. And Dorian's a better person than me because he didn't hold any grudges. He was very forgiving, so hats off to him. But there's quotes in that book that made me sob for him, and I've not yet recovered. So yeah, I love Aileen. I didn't realise I was saying her name wrong, and now I can't call her Aileen. That's really weird to me. I call her Aileen, because I don't know. I just always did. I thought her name was more like that. I just had much higher hopes for Throne of Glass. I thankfully didn't read this as the first book of the series. I read The Assassin's Blade as my first book, and I beg everyone, if you have not read this series, that you need to get people to read The Assassin's Blade first, in my opinion, because the emotional turmoil that I experienced reading this first, I would never change. And I know people are like, put it third or fourth for the emotional impact. No. Read it first so that you go into this knowing why our main character is like that. And that's the only redeeming factor about Throne of Glass, is that I read The Assassin's Blade first. I understood Selena's character. I understood the survival aspect of this, why she has to do the things she's doing, and I just felt so much more connected to the character. So this might have honestly been lower ranked if I hadn't read The Assassin's Blade first, because yeah, I understood the main character a lot more, so I somewhat enjoyed this book and understood her more. So yeah, I wasn't impressed. I wish we got more of the trials and the challenges and less of the like dresses and the court politics and court gossip nonsense. I just felt like there was a lot of faff in this that wasn't necessary. So that's why it is ranked there. So that was book 10 out of 12, and we're moving on to book 9. I got a lot of heat for saying I didn't like this book previously. I understand why people do like it. I'm not saying you shouldn't, and everybody just has different opinions. I just don't think this was what it could have been. And I think that's what frustrated me the most, is that I felt like there was like a lot of just unnecessary stuff, and it just kind of droned on. Like, this was a slog for me to get through, and I remember that, and I really went into this thinking it was going to be one of the best out of the series, and it wasn't. And I feel like I was just quite disappointed about that. The kind of last chunk of this is really good though. I loved whatever that like trial thing that happened was. I wish that there was more time spent on that. And I hated that was cut off by what was going on with Farah and the baby, and I was just like, oh, I'm a bit of a hater of the like unexpected or like just throw in pregnancy trope, and I felt like that was a bit of that in this. I do wish that if they were going to do that, we had another book that focused on Farah and we got to see her point of view of the pregnancy. I feel like that was just a bit of a weird throwaway to put into Nesta's book when we've spent the last 3 books with Farah. It just kind of felt like a bit of a weird thing to me. Yeah, and then the way it all ended with Nesta giving up her powers to save Farah and the baby, I didn't like that either, because it just felt like so much of this build-up was her healing journey, and then that was the conclusion, and I just didn't really like that. I mean, I feel like the way that Nesta and Farah's relationship was throughout this whole book was a big reason why I really it just didn't sit right with me, as her like hatred towards her younger sister in comparison to how much she adores and loves Elaine. I could not get behind her hatred in that sense, and then it felt like that was just kind of and now they're happy and they've healed everything because she saved them. It was like, it didn't sit right for me. And I also think that the relationship with Nesta and Cassian could have been something so good, but instead it was just overwhelmed with spice instead, and I didn't like that. I feel like that should add to the building of the relationship, and it didn't for me in this. It just overwhelmed it and suffocated it. The relationship that Nesta has with the house, I absolutely loved, and there are some very redeeming factors. I love the friendship that she builds in this with the other girls that she trains with. I absolutely loved that, but It kind of made my soul hurt that she couldn't have that with her sisters, and she continued to, for so much of this book, hate on Feyre. I don't know, it didn't vibe the way it was supposed to vibe, and it was disappointing because I really love Nesta and I love her story. It's so important, and I love books that deal with mental health issues, especially her journey is so important throughout this fantasy realm. It's so cool that we get her point of view on this, but it was just lacking in many ways for me. And I'm sorry, that's just my opinion. So, number 8, we have the Assassin's Blade. Guys, if you take away anything from this, it's a reminder of how good the Assassin's Blade is. I know you might be like, it's on number 8, it can't be that good. I wish I could put it higher, but guys, I'm talking about Throne of Glass here, okay? Give me a breather, because all of these books deserve the top spot in my opinion. But The Assassin's Blade is the first book that I read, and it was probably about this time last year. It would have been earlier actually. It's been over a year since I started reading Throne of Glass, Assassin's Blade, and I'm so happy every single day that I think about Throne of Glass, because it is every single day. They do not lie when they say that you cannot escape this fandom. Once you're in it, it is a prison, and you will be reminded every single day that there's nothing ever going to compare, that no matter what you read, you're always going to want to reread Throne of Glass, because that's so true. And I love this book because it started it all, and I personally loved starting the journey where Selena did and ending it where we did. I would not have changed my reading order at all, and I feel like this is such a gut punch. The more you read through of the series, the more devastating this book becomes, and there's so many little Easter eggs that tear my heart apart. It's crazy because the people she meets, the loss she goes through, the pain that she's left with, and the betrayal, the whole journey like ties so well into everything else in the series. That's why I loved reading this first, because I feel like I remember a lot of the events in this a lot better than if it was like I was reading it right before they happened. I feel like it was a much more genuine read. I just loved these. I loved these stories. I loved the people she meets and the relationships she made, and I loved the way they then tied into the rest of the story. And I feel like reading it first is just such a nice way to start off the series, and it really connected me because I was so engrossed and I was so interested in starting this series. And every story I was so excited to read. I didn't just try and fly through it so that I could continue on with the series. I loved it. So yeah, even though this book is on number 8, I still love this, and it is one of my favourite books I've ever read. Now, next up we have A Court of Wings and Ruin. I have mixed feelings about this book. Maybe people are gonna disagree that it's on number 7, but I did enjoy it. However, I felt like this took me a while to get through. I kind of went through like a bit of a reading slump during reading this, and then I remember getting unwell and I had a lot of time on my hands, so I managed to finish it. But it felt quite long, and that's coming from someone who read through Kingdom of Ash in like a week, or like just over a week. So like big books don't scare me, but I don't know, something about this felt just quite slow to me. But when you get into the later parts of the book, it really picks up its pace. So I feel like this is definitely a standout, of course, in the ACOTAR series because of the war plots that go on in this, and all of the kind of planning that leads up to that, and the execution, the big fight that goes on, the twists that go on in this. It's all really, really good, and I love it. And I love how much we get to see of the inner circle. Very, very good book, just in comparison to Throne of Glass now. really doesn't compare, in my opinion. And that even leads me on to A Court of Mist and Fury, which is obviously my favourite book out of the ACOTAR series, and it was my favourite Sarah J Maas book. I thought this book was incredible when I hadn't read Throne of Glass, but now that I've read Throne of Glass, I of course, I mean, it's in, what spot? Number 6. It's in number 6 out of 12, so it's a good book. I still really enjoy this. I do want to reread ACOTAR at some point, but in comparison to the characters and the storyline of Throne of Glass, ACOTAR just doesn't really compare to me anymore, and I still love it. I love that it got me into fantasy again, and this kind of like romantasy world building, lots of different magic systems. I love that this is the kind of series that got me into it, and I'm forever grateful. But yeah, I liked Farah and Reese's story, and maybe it's just because I've not read these in so long. It was like years ago that I read these, and obviously my love for Throne of Glass has just been awakened over the past year, so yeah, I don't know. I feel like once you read A Court of Thorns and Roses and then going into this is like a breath of fresh air. I loved Farah's character arc in this. I love her finding her own and joining Rhys on this journey. I love it. But to be honest, I feel like I'd need to reread this to really relive it again. But from what I remember, I do really love Farah and Rhys's story. I love the kind of transition into the Night Court and her finding her own and becoming the Farah that we all know and love in the later books. But yeah, I think once I read Throne of Glass, I knew that it was over for ACOTAR, because I just love the characters a lot more and the storyline. But so yeah, maybe I'm being a little bit harsh on ACOTAR, because it's been a while since I've read the books, but I love this and I love the journey that we go through in this. It will never not be good, in my opinion. Really, really fun. But it just simply doesn't compare. It doesn't compare. And that takes us on to, honestly, this book should be higher. Tower of Dawn. I cannot believe people skip this book. I went into this as a bit of a Cole hater. He hadn't had his moment yet, and I wasn't really a fan based on what I've said about Crown of Midnight and even his character in Queen of Shadows, which I'll get onto. I loved this book for him. I love Irene so much. I love her so much. She is the light, the saving grace that she's, like, I wish she was in the rest of the series. I almost hate that we only got this, and then of course she's in Kingdom of Ash as well, but there's so much going on in that book in general that she doesn't really get her time. She does, but like this, I love her character so much, and she's not perfect. She does have moments that she kind of let me down, but I love her. I love her so much. I love her story. I think something that's really underrated about this particular book is the environment and the southern continent in general. Sounds beautiful, and I feel it feels like a much more peaceful and beautiful and kind of like untouched piece of the world in comparison to the Valg and Erwin, everyone in the rest of the books. It's kind of like, it's a bad place to be. So I feel like coming to the southern continent, it sounds beautiful, and when I was reading, I was like, if I could visit anywhere in this entire landscape, this entire fantasy realm, I would want to visit the southern continent because it sounds amazing. So I loved being there with these characters. I loved Irene. I loved the kind of her healing and her healing Cole, the journey that they go on together, despite like holding so much resentment for him for his role being a guard, etc. I don't know, their story's just so good, and it feels really, really natural. And the whole time I was reading this, I was like, oh my god, this is what I was waiting for. This is like a whole different Cole. It's a whole different guy, and he really goes through it. And I thought he went through it in like a really commendable way. From what we had experienced with Cole in the previous books, especially in Crown of Midnight, Queen of Shadows, etc., the way he handles his paralysis, his injury, he took it like champ. He was so good throughout it, and it's a tough journey. It is very, very tough, and I thought the way he handles himself and the way he develops throughout this book really, really, it was a redemption arc for me. It was a redemption arc, and I was not in any way, shape or form rushing through his chapters. I was actually excited to read about him and what he was doing. He truly was different, and I feel like so many people who skip this book are missing out on so much. This book is epic. It is epic, and it ties together so many parts of the story that are necessary to fully enjoy and understand everything that happens in Kingdom of Ash. Because without this journey, Kingdom of Ash, you're missing key components. Like Irene and all the healers that come through at the end of this book don't even understand the role they're about to play. Like, crazy good. There was so many like parts of their journey and their little romance that I adored, and I was just so happy for them. And this book had me kicking my feet and squealing. That's how I feel about Irene and Cole, and it makes me sad that so many people are missing out on that journey. They deserve this. I don't want to say what I said about Tamlin being like a kind of throw-in romance. I hate that. I feel like characters should be able to develop without like a kind of throwaway romance. I think I'll be saying her name right. Nezarine. I feel for her because I feel like her story was really a side story, and it was a shame because I feel like she had a really cool part to play in this, but her and Cole's weird sort of semi-relationship was really, really strange to me and really, really awkward at points, and I wish it just didn't happen. I wish they were just friends. I feel like it added a complication that didn't need to be added. Anyways, I wish that her story had a bit more, because she had a really important part about her exploring the world and going to the spiders, etc., finding out about Maeve. That part blew my mind. I don't know why I didn't realise that, or maybe I did already. No, I don't think I did, because my mind was fully blown at that. Like, that makes so much sense. Why didn't I even think of that? Of course she's Valg. A Valg queen at that. Anyway, I just love the whole way that this all ties together, and I wish that her story held a bigger part. But nonetheless, really, really good book, and it is on what, 5? It doesn't really do that justice. It's because of the books above that it can't go any higher, in my opinion. Next book we have Heir of Fire. This truly is where this story begins. I mean, you meet Manon and all of the witches, and you truly get to dig into Erwin and his cult. It's crazy good, and at first I will admit that this took a bit of getting used to, because it is kind of, it's different. You're getting a lot of different point of views. You're no longer just following Selena or Aileen. You now have so many different characters. You're going all around the map, but Manon is like, she is such a good character, and I can't describe how important this book is in the series, even for Rowan. and Aileen, of course, as well, their story developing and her becoming truly her own and coming into being the queen that she is. This is where it all begins in my eyes, and that is why the other 3 books are below this, because I truly think that this is where the series picks up. And I think everyone kind of agrees on that, but I have saw a lot of people who really, really dislike this book, which I can kind of understand because it is so different in comparison to the other books, but I think it's great. I think it's really, really good, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed everyone's point of views and the stories that we open up. I can't remember, I mean it must be, if this is where Manon and Dorian's story begins as well. They better get a book, guys. They better get a book, because the ending didn't do it justice for me, and I still hold so much love for them and their potential. But yeah, I think the introduction of the witches is so interesting to me, especially with their dragons, their wyvern, whatever they're called in this book. I think it's wyvern. I loved that, because who doesn't? I read Fourth Wing, like I love that type of thing. I love the bond that you get between the rider and their wyvern or dragon. I think that's so special, and I love that type of vibe. So I think this is where I began to get so connected, which is why Kingdom of Ash is so brutal. The story that the witches go through, all of them, is horrific, and I'm not going to say too much more or I might cry, so we're going to move on. So that's on number 4, Heir of Fire. And then we're going to move on to Empire of Storms. I loved this book. However, guys, it did put me into a slump, so I feel like if that hadn't happened, I maybe would have it further up, but you know what books are above it. I feel like you can understand why I've ranked it this way. Empire of Storms to me was really, really good. It's really fast paced, and there's so much going on in here. There's so much going on. So of course this goes on at the same time as Tower of Dawn. I didn't tandem read them though. I chose to keep them separate as separate books, and I personally am really, really happy that I'd done that. I feel like it kind of gave each book its own time to be appreciated, and I wouldn't change that if or when I do reread. I will likely do the tandem read just to see what it's like, but I personally think that they deserve to be individual books, at least for your first read through, because this pacing is so different, and the setting, I feel like you really get engrossed in what's going on with these characters. The journey that Lorcan and Elid go on in this is one that I love. I love those characters. I really loved Elid, and I loved her in Queen of Shadows as well, but I feel like this book really gave her like her own kind of voice, and you get to see a lot more of her and her freedom, and I love that. And I feel like Lorcan was a really unexpected part for me in her story, but it meshed really well, and yeah, I love it. I remember what it was that put me into the slump, and looking back I don't necessarily know why it put me into the slump. I think I read it one night when I was like really, really tired, and then I had to like keep rereading it because I kept reading when I was really, really tired, like after work, and I wasn't clicking. It was the battle at Skulls Bay, and I don't know why, because then when I picked it up I reread that chapter, or like a few chapters, and then it was like great again, and I was super into it. I don't know. It's funny how sometimes like I love this book, but sometimes like one little thing can just throw you off. So yeah, I feel like top 3 for Empire Storms fits well for my experience. I really enjoyed this book. I liked how fast paced it was, and I like how the story develops as well. I think for me the cliffhanger in this book is one of the most intense and gut-wrenching I've ever experienced, because you're so invested in the series, you're so invested in the main characters, and of course it's Aileen. It's my favourite character ever going through this. The grief that I've felt with Rowan on that beach, like, I'm still there. I can very easily go back there. It's ingrained in my soul at this point. And finding out about Aileen's whole plan she has for everyone, nuts. That whole thing, I was sobbing. My heart was broken at that point. And then to go and read Tower of Dawn, thinking about her, knowing she's going through horrible, awful things, and yeah, it's hard, and I understand why people want to tandem read so that you don't get that cliffhanger, but the pain is, it makes Kingdom of Ash even tougher, I guess. Like, it just, the build-up is kind of worth it, in my opinion, so yeah. It will break you, but this is such a good book. Such a good book. I also really, really love that Manon and Aileen are kind of together in this. I don't know, it was kind of like in Game of Thrones when Jon Snow and Daenerys finally met. It was like my two favourite characters from across the world are finally in the same spot and working together, and they're the best ever. So seeing them together in this book, fighting against the Valg and Erwin, really, really cool. I enjoyed that. So that brings me on to our two final books, Kingdom of Ash and Queen of Shadows. Now, before I read Kingdom of Ash, Queen of Shadows was my very clear favourite of the series. I feel like I love these two books in really different ways. I mean, Kingdom of Ash I love because it's the epic conclusion of the series. Everything comes together for the final time. The final battle against evil. It's so intense. She gets to go home eventually. There's so much loss and so much fear and pain throughout this entire thing. But it's amazing. It's amazing. Like, it broke my heart into a million pieces. I was not myself after finishing this book. This series conclusion is like so devastating for like a huge fan of these characters in this story, in this world. I genuinely felt like I was losing friends reading this and finishing this, so I don't know, I feel like any book that can make you feel that type of thing, something that actually, like, it made my chest feel heavy and like I had a pit in my stomach for days. I cried so much, like, and I see so many clips and quotes from this book in particular that I feel like are just so good. So I feel like it is probably my favourite. Genuinely one of the best books, if not the best book I've ever read. It is so dear to my heart. But then I love Queen of Shadows because this is like, you're in the pit of the story in this, and everything, the build up to this. I feel like there's just so many good points of this book, and I love the storylines that are going on. Cole in this book though deserves jail time. Like, he was so annoying in this book, and just like straight up rude and nasty to Aileen. Not cool. But then you get Tower of Dawn. His redemption arc is so important. Everyone needs to know that. Anyway, Queen of Shadows to me is, it's the peak of the continuing series. I love Kingdom of Ash because I think it's such a good conclusion to the series. I think it needs to be this long. I saw so many people say, why is it so long? It can never be this serious. I think it could have been shorter. I think this book is perfect. And yeah, I think it maybe is, in hindsight, the way I feel about these books. Kingdom of Ash is probably my favourite, and Queen of Shadows is probably my second favourite. I was just thinking about everything that Aileen went through with Maeve, and the whole emotional turmoil of witnessing that and reading about that, but the one saving grace is the revenge that we get for her and the relationship that she bonds with during this time with Fenris. I love that relationship. I think it is so beautiful, and I love that it follows through to the very end, and it's so good. I really didn't think that Gabrielle's death was necessary. I do think that's an injustice, and I feel really bad for Aidan for that missed opportunity. And I do think that there was some sort of kind of void left at the end of the book for him. I do think that the ending is good, but as I said, I need a Dorian and Manon book right now. I would need it right now. Because the way things left off, there's so much what if, or what happens next, and I need to know. I think it would be beautiful. So I'm waiting for that book. I'll take it whenever, preferably sooner rather than later. I just think that this whole journey, crazy, absolutely crazy, and I think it tied together everything so well that it needs to be at the top in my personal opinion. And everyone that comes together in the end to fight, and the sacrifice that the 13 gave, I think that is the hardest part of this. The Gabrielle death, I can understand there has to be some death, but the 13 one, I was literally screaming, no, that can't happen. That has to be fake. But it was real. It was completely real. And I don't think you recover from reading something like that, to be honest. I seriously don't. And I grieved with Manon. That one hurts, still hurts. So that was a brutal thing to add into the book, but very, very impactful, and they wouldn't have won without that sacrifice. So I get it, but it still was very, very painful. And I don't that's why I want a Manon book with Dorian as well, because I feel there's so much of her story left unsaid, and yeah, I need it, to be honest. I need it. Maybe I need to read some Manon Dorian fanfiction or something, but I think that is why Kingdom of Ash is my favourite, because this still hits me like a ton of bricks. The story in this is amazing to me and precious to me, and I think everyone who finishes this series the way I did knows the heartache that this story brings. But also just the happiness, to read a ending that isn't perfect, but you are still very much content with and feel you're putting a lot of it to rest. I feel it's hard to do. It's very hard to do. So not perfect ending. I still think things are left unsaid and I would like to hear from other characters, but very much a necessary book and amazing in its own right. So, and of course, Queen of Shadows is an amazing book. This really did feel like the peak when I was reading through this series. The witches' stories is insane in this, and I feel this is really where everything peaks for them. And you really, really get into Manon's character as well in here, and I love that. So that is my official Sergi Maas rankings for my current reads. No doubt my reading rankings will change eventually when I read Crescent City and when other books come out for ACOTAR, of course, but I think every week I consider, is it too soon to reread Throne of Glass? Because this is my Roman Empire. It is my Roman Empire, and I just miss the characters and the story so much, so much. It does break my heart that it is completed. You know, we still have so much to look forward to with ACOTAR. And it pains me that we don't get that with Throne of Glass. But who knows, maybe we'll get a man on in a Dorian book eventually. So yeah, that is my Series Maas rankings. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and let me know in the comments if you've read these series. I assume you have if you're reading this, or maybe you just like spoilers, which is insane to me that people do that. But yeah, let me know in the comments, what's your favourite book? How would you rank these books? If you've read Crescent City, let me know all about your thoughts on this world, these connected worlds to some extent. I hope to see you in the next video. Bye guys!